So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon on Wednesday, the 29th of June, 2022, on Vision Store's Exploring Technology webinar on using your computer efficiently and effectively. My name is Tony Wu, and I'll be one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined by my fellow colleague and AT guru, David Woodbridge. I'd like to begin the session by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. The webinar will be recorded for those who cannot stay for the entire session, and you can access the recording later by visiting Vision Australia's YouTube channel. This is an interactive session, so please submit any questions that you may have for us throughout the session by using our chat box. For those that use a screen reader, you can access the chat function through keystroke Alt-H or Command-H if you use a Mac. We'll endeavour to answer as many questions as best as we can and as many as time permits. Welcome, David, and I see you're travelling at the moment.
You can see I'm travelling at the moment. It's the old adage about the show must go on. I've just finished my 8th karate lesson, so I've just actually upgraded to my next belt level, which is actually really fantastic. So for the next 7 minutes, folks, you're going to see me sitting in my red car, which I always like to say is like the Wiggles red car. And then I'll be home in about 7 minutes, and then I'll go into my office, and then we'll keep talking. But can I say I'm really enthusiastic to talk about tips and tricks to get the most out of your computer. And when I say computer, I'm sort of stretching it a little bit because I'm talking about computers, so both desktop and laptops and tablets, and then also those hybrid ones, which are both a tablet and, if you like, a laptop in one, and just straight tablets. And what I thought I'm going to focus on is all the things that I've done over the last 3 decades of trying to keep up, be efficient, and be productive with my whatever computer I'm using. So for the first 15 years of my tech life, I used Windows. For the last 17 years, I've used a Mac. First time iOS came out, I've been using that for 13 years, and now Android for about 3. So I'm across all systems, which is really fantastic. But anyway, let's get back to the computer. So most people know a computer is you've got 3 units normally. You've got the system box, you've got a keyboard, and you've got a monitor and, mouse/trackpad, whatever else it might be. And the other thing I want to say too is that, I do know you can get computers that are all in one, which is absolutely fine. But what I want to go back to is the really nice option is that if your system unit is separate to the monitor or screen, because that way you're allowing yourself much more flexibility. So the first thing I really want to talk about are monitors or screens, because the first thing that I always ask people when they talk about their computer screen or their monitor is what type of monitor it is. So traditionally, back in the old days, not too long ago, we had LCD screens. And then we had more sort of advanced screens called LED screens. And what we're finding more, particularly in the workplace and education, that we're recommending the LED screens. And that's because it's not a backlit monitor, it's a side lit. And the screen is not as glary. So it's a lot easier to see. And if you suffer from things like visual fatigue, you get headaches, that sort of stuff, then that type of monitor is much easier to look at for a low vision person and indeed a sighted person. So LED is my favourite monitor now. I'm sure there'll be new monitors coming out that'll be there to be my favourite. I personally don't recommend you plug into a traditional television screen. There are some really cool Samsung monitors out there that are designed to be both a smart monitor, not a TV, a smart monitor that have usually got a webcam in them. So they're okay, but I just find I've had people tell me that the refresh rate or how fast the screen updates on televisions, depending on the model you get, they're not that fast, but you can always try. I mean, if you buy a system box and you think, oh, well, look, I've got this whopping TV in my lounge room, I'll just plug it into the HDMI and see what happens, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with trying and testing things out. So LED screens. The second thing I want to talk about is the size of the monitor. Now, this is a really personal thing. And in the workplace, it gets a bit fiddly because we also have to remember occupational health and safety, because if the bigger the screen you've got, the more that you've got to turn your head around. to view the entire screen. So traditionally, I know most folks that use a large monitor use between 24 and 27, but I've also heard people that use religiously a 30-inch diagonal screen, and I've even heard one guy use a 37-inch screen. But they're sort of really as far as I know, they're sort of random ones in the workplace. Most people that I know use a 24 or 27-inch. And keep in mind that if you really want to, you can also use two monitors. Thank you about the pixel density on the TV screen. That's good to know as well, Michael. I should let people know too that if you've got any comments like Michael just did, please feel free to pop in, because I'm actually a completely blind person. So with the low vision stuff, I'm basically saying what I've been told by side of it. So let's say a good large screen size to fit everybody is 27 inches. And the next thing I want to talk about is where the monitor is on your desk. And let me just undo my headphone for a minute, because I'm about to get out of the car. Hang on a tick. I'm just going to put the phone down briefly so I can untangle myself from my seatbelt.
While David is sort of getting out of the car, the position of your monitor is quite important as well. Where you position your monitor on your desk and where it is in the room can sort of affect how much you can see. Obviously, you don't want to be facing the window and you have a lot of issues with glare. So normally your adaptive technology specialist, or whoever's helping you assess what you require from a workplace perspective, they will look at the layouts of your room, where the window is, to ensure that if you do have glare issues, that you're not facing the window. In terms of positioning yourself in front of the monitor, ideally the middle of the screen should be eye level. So eye level is the middle of your monitor. I think David just logged out, and I think he'll log back in very shortly. Here he is. But the position of the monitor in the room, as well as how you position yourself when viewing the monitor, is really important.
Excellent. That was really funny then, guys. When I walked into my house, Zoom didn't want to transfer from mobile to my Wi-Fi network. So you might have seen me go a bit wonky there for a minute. All right, I am safely inside, which is fantastic.
Excellent.
All right. So I'm assuming you just talked about the placement of the monitor and being careful of, other light sources in the room, so you've got it positioned correctly.
That's correct.
Cool. All right. Now, the next thing to consider is also to do with the placement of your monitor is to get yourself a monitor arm. Because I've heard people that do really weird things, like they go, okay, I need my monitor a bit higher. I'll just bung it on a cardboard box or a couple of the old telephone books. What you want is a monitor to do a couple of things. You want to be able to move it up or down, left or right, and very importantly, you want to be able to move it towards you, because one of the things that you don't want to keep doing for your lower back is to keep leaning forward all the time. That's not a really healthy idea. So I always say to people, when you're looking at the monitor, make sure it's on a monitor arm that can go left, right, up and down and go towards you. And then sometimes if you've got one of those desks that are very deep, you can also get what is called an extension arm. So that allows the monitor screen to come a lot further on your desk. And of course, when you're not using it, you can just push it back again. But I always say to people, particularly in the workplace, don't feel like you have to keep, leaning forward and peering at your screen. You can get the screens to come forward towards you on a monitor arm. So that's a really good thing to do. All right, so that's practically all I wanted to say about monitors. Now, the second thing that's important with any computer, besides the system box that does all the stuff for you, is the keyboard. And yes, you can still get USB plug-in keyboards. And of course, these days we've got Bluetooth or wireless keyboards. And what I always say to people, it's really important to always have a backup keyboard. So I'm lucky in my house, I've got lots of keyboards, but I've always got a USB keyboard, and I've got several, actually probably more than several, but I've got lots of Bluetooth keyboards as well. Because if for some reason your Bluetooth keyboard goes down and you can't access your computer, then you can always use a USB keyboard. So if I just show you this one. Now, Tony, I've got no idea what color this one is. It's one of our USB keyboards from Vision Australia store.
It's black keys with a white background.
Okay, yep. And we can also get black background with white characters, and you can also get yellow on black, I believe, as well, Tony.
That's correct.
And this keyboard is fantastic because I think when I bought this, Tony, I'm fairly sure it's still the same. It's ultra cheap. I think it's less than, around about $20 basically. And it's just a normal standard USB keyboard. And dare I say, it even works on my Mac. So, plug it into the Mac. If you've got a computer that's got a USB-C port on it, all you do is you just pop on a USB to USB-C adapter. You can get them from anywhere. And it turns the keyboard into a USB-C type keyboard. But really, really nice to have as a backup. And in actual fact, I can plug in this via the USB-C adapter onto my Android phone, so my Z3 Flip, and actually use it externally as a hardware keyboard that's plugged into it. It works really nicely. And it just reminds me of the old keyboards that I used to use about 30 years ago when I first started using a computer. So that's that one. And then I don't have this one here, but let me just grab another keyboard. Okay, so this keyboard is basically, this one's an Apple Magic keyboard. Let me just check where my camera is because I don't want to confuse you guys. This one is an actual Apple Magic keyboard. So this is the one you traditionally
Hold it up
use.
a little bit, David. That's it. Perfect.
Cool. This is the one you traditionally use with an iOS device, so your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac, whatever else. But it's also a standard Bluetooth keyboard. So I can also use this with Windows. But the other thing that we also sell at Vision Australia is what's called a Mac keyboard. And it's MAC, but it's not an Apple Mac keyboard. It's a Mac keyboard, which means that's the name of the product. It's a general Bluetooth keyboard, and it's also got larger contrast characters on the keys. And it's really about the same size as this keyboard. It's just that the characters on the actual keys are much bigger. And the other reason why I like this keyboard and the Mac keyboard, you've got this little switch on the back, and you can always tell whether the keyboard's on or off, because as a blind person, I never quite know whether some of my Bluetooth keyboards are on and off half the time, because of course, being blind, can't see the light. The other thing you can get for your computer keyboards are large print stickers. So again, you can get these from the Vision Australia Vision store, because I know, particularly when people are losing their sight, or for sighted people in general, and I'm generalising here, Tony, don't really type well on a computer keyboard. They tend to use 2 fingers, 4 fingers. They don't, God forbid, use touch typing, which is what I had to learn when I lost my sight a long time ago. But there's no harm in putting large stickers. So you think, oh, God damn it, where's yes, those keyboards are compatible with ZoomText. So the other thing that you won't be able to, the other thing about the stick-on ones is that it's all keys. So not just your alphanumeric keys like A, B, C, D, and your number keys, your function keys, your enter key, your control key, all those sort of keys. So if you have to, look down and you think, where's that P gone? Or where's the N key and that sort of stuff? Fine. At the end of the day, as long as you can effectively use your computer, who really cares if you can't touch type? Okay, so that's a really good thing to do. And you can also get Braille overlays, I'm assuming still, Tony. I did have mine, but I've lost mine now because I got my office rebuilt about 2 months ago, and some things have went missing, of course, in the renovation going out in the end. But you can get, and again, that's Braille characters on your keys.
That's correct.
Yep, cool. All right. And then finally, now this is my all-time favorite thing you can do off the keyboard. I don't know why it's all my time favorite because it's so basic. You can get these things called lock dots, which are a pack of little 6 tactile dots that you stick on your keyboard. So, you might have noticed that your F and your J key is quite tiny on the markers on it. Some keyboards have markers on, function key 4, 8, and 12, and so on. So this way you can mark your own favorite keys. So maybe you want to mark F and J again, maybe the top row of numbers, so 4 and 7. You might want to label, say, F4, function key 4, and, F4, F8 or F7, whatever you might want to do, your enter key and so on. Some people used to use, back in the dim dark past, used to use Velcro. So what they used to do is use rough Velcro on your control keys. So things like Tab, Caps Lock, Enter, Control, Alt, and Windows key, and then use soft Velcro for your alphanumeric. I used to always find those things are a bit too bulky. So that's why I say, the simple lock dots, which are clear, so you won't get your wife, husband, partner yelling at you because they can't see the keyboard anymore. You can see through them quite nicely. So that's keyboards. Now, and I should say, marking up a keyboard, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But again, I would strongly suggest, particularly I've learned in the COVID days, if you're relying on a Bluetooth keyboard to connect up to your desktop, whatever else it might be, like I just said before, it's always a good idea to have a USB keyboard on standby. And speaking of other things you can plug in, I'm going to turn to mice now. And in general, personally speaking, I absolutely hate mice. But remember, with Windows, you can do if you find the mouse too hard to find on the screen, then you can do a high contrast mouse cursor in Windows. And these are all found under settings accessibility. So you can do things like a big cross. You can hit a key on the keyboard that has this target that targets the mouse on the screen. You can have the cursor jump to the mouse location on the screen. You can do all that sort of stuff. And this is the same that you can do with the keyboard. As you can have an on-screen keyboard on your computer system, like Windows, so you can actually, look at the keyboard on the screen. You've also got a function called mouse keys. And what that does, it emulates the control of the mouse, rolling around the mouse on the desk and clicking. So you've got this keyboard control over the mouse. So you're much more, I guess, definite, because if you have trouble for one reason or another controlling the mouse, then you can actually use the keyboard to control it. Now, the other alternative, which is the one that I tend to recommend to people, is sometimes maybe using a trackpad. So rather than physically, pushing this mouse around the table, you can actually drag your finger, much like on an iPad or an Android device, around the screen on the trackpad itself, and then, if you like, clicking down on the trackpad. And that works really well for some people as well. And the other thing to remember about both mouse movement and trackpad movement is that you can slow down or speed up how fast the mouse actually moves. So that's the other thing you can do. The other really cool thing, besides slowing and speeding things up on the mouse, is that with the keyboard, now I'm going to say this with some trepidation, because sometimes on some screen readers, they don't like what I'm about to say. But there's a couple of things in Windows and on the Mac, which are one's called response keys. And what response keys are is, if you hold down a letter and keep your finger held down, normally it would just go T, 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 T. But with response keys turned on, you just get one T. So if you suffer from tremors or you've got poor hand movements or something like that, then having response keys turned on, again, it's an accessibility feature, is a really good thing. The other one is called slow keys, which sort of roughly does a similar thing. And the other one, which definitely does work, and particularly JAWS for Windows has its own function, and that's called sticky keys. So let's say, for example, I said to you, look, I want you to press Control and O for open. Now, if you can't hold down Control and open together, then you're sort of up the creek without a paddle. But what you can do with sticky keys is you can press the control key, you lift your finger up, you press the O key, and the computer knows that's the end of that sequence, and it will do the command. And that'll work both with your screen reader, your application, and in this case, we're also talking about Windows, and the same on the Mac. So that actually works really nicely. So remember sticky keys, particularly for people that have trouble holding down more than one key. And response keys is for when you don't want the DDD or the TTT happening as well. So that's actually really important to use. The other one I mentioned, skipping back to the mouse briefly, or the mice, one final one I want to talk about, and this is what we used to recommend a lot, sort of between, I guess, about 2010, 2015. And I haven't seen many people recommend it much anymore, I guess because of touch screens now. But you can actually get a trackball. So the old-fashioned mice, rather than having lasers or optical sensors underneath them, traditionally had a round metal ball or a little rubber ball that used to roll around. So if you can imagine that ball to be the size up to about the size of a tennis ball, sitting in a cradle, and then you literally put your hand on top of the trackball, and as you roll your hand around on the trackball, pushing it forward, back, left, and right, you're actually moving the the mouse pointer on the screen. Really amazing stuff. And because you've got that inertia of the trackball, being able to push it or just spin it around and so with your hand, even though you're doing a bit of a gross movement, you've got much more control over it than trying to sort of hold the mouse with your fingers and do other functionality. So that works really nicely. And if you want to go to the ultimate thing about physical access to a computer, then of course we can start talking about switches. So what switches do is they turn on and off a function or make a function run, and then you can stop it. So traditionally, you might think of a switch as somebody's got a on-screen keyboard. They activate the switch. It goes across, backwards and forwards across the keyboard. When they get to the key they want, they tap or bang on whatever you want to do on the switch. And again, you can get tiny switches that are size of I don't know how big are mine are, but half the size of a playing card, a bit thicker, right up to a huge, humongous dinner plate size one, depending on what you want. And of course, you can have multiple switches that perform different functions. So, you can do a lot of things with hardware on the computer. Okay, so we've done the monitor, we've done the keyboard, we've done the mouse. Now I want to do and talk really briefly to some extent about the camera. So usually if you've got a laptop, we know all about the fact that you've got a camera built into the laptop for both, Windows and Mac, of course. And of course, if you're using an Android device or an iOS device, you've got a camera. I would suggest that if you don't have a webcam, it might be handy to just buy a cheap one from electronic stores, because that way, if you need to visually do a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting, God forbid, a Skype meeting, I didn't say that, then you can use the webcam. And the other thing to remember about webcams is that if you need visual assistance from your friends, relatives, wife, husband, blah, 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 they can zoom in or whatever else into you. And, if you've got a portable laptop or you're in your study with your desktop, then you've got a webcam there. And what I'm really looking forward to at the end of this year is to do with Mac Ventura. So that's Mac OS 13. And what happens is, as soon as my Mac sees the fact that it's got an iPhone nearby, I can choose to use my iPhone as my webcam straight away, and it works absolutely beautifully. And the nice thing about it is it tries to be both a front and face camera and also an overview looking down camera. So if I'm doing a demonstration, not only can you see me, but it's also using the ultra wide lens on the iPhone to look down at the desks. And the other thing it's going to be doing too is that it will look like I'm using an overhead ring light. And what most people use overhead ring lights for is just to illuminate usually what they're demonstrating. So it just lights up the top of the desk really well. So webcams are really cool. I always say to people, if you're worried about it when you're not using it, just get a bit of good old sticky tape or Band-Aid or do something and put something over the camera. And that way you're not worried about if somebody's snipping on you or not. So webcams are very cool. And I just realized I forgot to mention one vital thing. And I don't think it happens anymore, but when I was originally talking about monitors, you can buy computers these days that you don't necessarily have to buy a screen with. So you buy the system box, and then you wander off and you buy your own keyboard, your monitor, your mouse, your blah, blah, blah. Now, some vision impaired people, particularly blind people, back in the dark old days, used to think, well, I'm blind, I don't need a monitor. Well, I'm actually here to say that you do, because if you've got sighted people that need to help you, if you've got a technician, or if you want Microsoft or Apple with a Mac Mini in Apple land to log in and help you, they need to have a monitor, not so much remotely, but certainly coming in. They're not going to be screen reader users or large print users, so you need a monitor. So what I did with mine, because I don't really care about my screen, I've got a little cheap 24-inch TV that I just plugged into the back of my Mac Mini, because I really don't care about the screen update, the pixel density, how it looks, or anything else. So when in doubt, if you get a one brand that I know we've talked about on Tech Fridays at Vision Australia, is called the NUC, NUC, and that's a computer that you can put any operating system on, Windows, Linux, etc. Or if you're in the Apple land, it's a Mac Mini. And of course, the Mac Mini being Apple is probably about several times more the cost of a NUC. But anyway, that's another option. All right, so that's, and one final thing I want to talk about webcams. There's this really cool application now out that I've tweeted on my own Twitter account called I Can See You. And what it does is when you run it, it will tell you whether you're in line or in focus with your camera. So I'm one of these people that sometimes when I put my laptop on, I've got the screen facing too far back, I've got the screen facing too far forward, or I'm not standing in front of the camera properly. And that's why Tony's here today, to yell at me in case I move out of the camera shot. But this thing is free, and you just run it on your Windows computer, and it will just tell you, you're towards the top of the camera view, you're towards the bottom, you're over to the left, or you're in the middle. Of course, that's where you want to be. And that works really well for Zoom meetings, team meetings, and anything else. And it doesn't use anything on the internet. It's all artificial intelligence running on your local device. And I just put it a enhancement to do with Mac OS 13 and saying, well, if Windows can do it and the iOS iPhone can do it and the iPad can do it with the camera, why can't we have that functionality on the Mac as well, please? So who knows, I might get that functionality later on this year when Mac Ventura comes out. All right, next thing is microphones. Microphones are the bane of my existence. And again, you can use and get away with using a microphone in your laptop, or if you're happy to use a microphone in a monitor, that's also fine. What I tend to say to people is that the best mics are normally ones that are separate from the computer, plugged in via USB or USB-C, and they're usually what's called an XLR mic. So they're mics that have a funny connection. So let me just grab my radio, the mic that I use for my radio program. So this is the one that I use for my radio program. So when I do Talk and Tech every week, this is exactly the mic that I'm using. And when I say an XLR mic, and Tony, I don't know if this can be visible, but that's what it looks like at the end of the cable.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it's got 3 holes in the back of the actual mic. You've got 3 pins that it connects into, and that's really, really handy. So that's the mic. The only thing about these mics in particular is they sort of need another thing to plug into, because they don't normally plug directly into your computer. they normally plug into what's called a mixer. And people that have been following me on Twitter and my podcast feed and so on can always hear me talk about, let me just grab my favorite little device here. Actually, whoops, Tony, I said the word favorite again. Damn. I almost lasted the time without saying it. All right. All right. So this proudly is one of my favorite devices. This is called a Zoom PodTrack P4. So it's a mixer.
Perfect.
So it's a mixer where I can plug in headphones down the bottom here, and I can plug in up to 4 mics on the back of it. And this just literally plugs in via a USB-C cable into my Windows computer, my Surface Pro, my Mac, whatever else I'm using. Because I find every try and look, this is me because I need to do radio programs. If you want a microphone to use with a Windows or a Mac, then yes, you can use USB headphones / mics. Just be very careful of how the quality sounds, because what you want is, you don't want to come across the Zoom meeting, or if you're doing an interview or whatever else, like you're sounding on like a telephone. So it might be too high frequency, mightn't sound very good, or etc. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But I would suggest that if you want to do serious, maybe podcasting, you do a radio program or anything else like that, you really need some type of mixer. Because the other thing about this mixer, which is actually very cheap, well, when I say cheap, it's about $350. Not only can I plug in 4 microphones, but I can also plug in via the connector here on the side. I can plug this into my PC. Okay, so my personal computer, whether it's Windows or a Mac. So that becomes number 4. So I can't plug in another mic. So I plug in my computer into number 4, and into number 3, I can also plug in my my iPhone. And sorry, I just got that around the wrong way. This side is the PC. So that's number 4. So left and right. And this side is my iPhone. So in effect, when I'm broadcasting, I've got 2 mics running, one for me and one for my guests. So 1 and 2. And then when I've got my iPhone connected, it's number 3. When I've got my PC connected, it's number 4. And I must say, when you're using a screen reader and talking at the same time, it's absolutely amazing. It works really nicely. And because they're all separate channels and I'm not recording on the mixer itself, nobody hears my iPhone, nobody hears my screen reader. The only thing they hear is my voice coming through the input, which is the mic. Really amazing. You can get these from any musical store that sells the Zoom PodTrack P4. I think the one that when I got mine from in Sydney was something like, I always want to say Easy Sound or Easy Audio or something like that. But basically, if you stick in Zoom PodTrack, and it's PodTrack P4, it'll come up usually with a number of shops. I also bought my first one from Amazon, but then I wanted another one, and I got too impatient and ended up buying it locally, which I probably should have done in the first place. Okay, so that's the mixer. Now, I'm about to go back. Remember I said never ever don't use a headset? Well, this is for people that don't want to actually use a mixer. You're okay with your audio quality because maybe you're just talking to mum and dad, or like what I do, my friends overseas in Canada, New Zealand, US, Britain, Scotland, doesn't matter where they are, I just yak to them. But this is another one of my, I'm going to say it again, Tony, one of my favorite headsets. This is the Arctis, that's ARTIS, Arctis SteelSeries gaming headset. Now, the reason why I love this headset is because it's a USB headset, yet again, but it's got this lovely control wheel here. And what that control wheel does, it allows me, because this headset replicates 2 sound cards in your computer. So when I plug this into my Windows computer or my Mac, I end up with an Arctis General sound card and an Arctis Chat sound card. So what happens is the Arctis Chat sound card gives me both audio and the microphone, which is hidden away inside the headset, which I'm about to pull out. It just folds away. And so when I'm in a Zoom meeting with my Arctis headset, what I sometimes do, and I never do this with Tony's meetings because I wouldn't do that, I can turn him down going that way, which means my screen reader gets louder. So, if Tony's giving me a long explanation, then I think, oh yeah, I'll just go and check my email. I can go right to the left and turn him completely off and concentrate on my screen reader, or that I can come back to the middle and both my screen reader and Tony are at the same volume. Or if I really want to focus on Tony, which is what I do all the time, I go right to the right-hand side and it's only Tony, no screen reader involved. So this is, I guess this is almost like my interim version of not going to a full mixer, because with the mixer, I can control any volume that's plugged into the mixer. So whether it's the mic volume, the PC volume, or the iPhone volume, and what's coming through my headset. So I can literally, when I'm talking to people through the headset, I can turn their volume down, I can turn my PC down, whatever else is happening. So with this one, you've still got two sound cards still happening, but you can turn one up or down depending on what you want to concentrate on. All right. So again, you're maintaining your productivity. These are really comfortable headsets to use. And the other nice thing about it is what also comes with them is I can take off this part here, plug on another adapter, and hey presto, I've got myself a 3.5mm standard headset that I can plug into, a gaming controller or anything else I like. Really, really nice. And again, I don't think I bought this one in Australia. I bought this on an Amazon website, but a really nice headset to use, really comfy, and it works nicely. Tony, can I just check out the time? Because I normally get carried away when I do this stuff.
It is 1:08.
Oh, I'm doing well. Oh, hooray me, 10 points. All right. Okay. And just one final thing, and I probably rushed out of the house, so I probably don't know where I put this. But everybody's probably heard me talk about it on Talking Tech, Tech Friday, my podcast, and then are the bone conduction headphones. So the Shokz bone conduction headphones are absolutely fantastic. And again,
That's
you can
what I'm
have
wearing.
them. Oh, hooray. Okay. Those headsets feel perfect with wearing glasses because I've got audio sunglasses and I can wear that headset over my audio sunglasses. So they work well. All right. So as modeled by Tony Wu from Vision Australia, and I'm assuming you've got the Shokz OpenCom with the boom mic, Tony?
That's correct.
Excellent. So the really cool thing about the boom mic is that it's going to be nearer to your mouth, so it'll pick up and it sounds very clear, particularly the way Tony's sounding now. And remember that you can link it up to two Bluetooth devices. So normally what I've done with mine, because I've got two sets. So I've got one set linked up to my iPhone and my Mac, and the other ones I can either have linked up, or sometimes I change it around, but normally it's my Android device and my Surface Pro Windows tablet. And they work perfectly nicely. So what normally happens with these ones is whatever Bluetooth device is talking has got control. As soon as the other one stops and you've got the other one active, it normally just pops in straight away. You don't have to turn the headset on and off. But when you connect them, or when you turn them on initially, you hear it say connecting. So you've got two devices that are live and being connected. So, and those things used to be called the AfterShokz. The company changed their name to Shokz, SHOKZ. And the OpenCom one is one with the boom microphone. The one before it, which was just called the OpenMove, didn't have the boom microphone. But I always say to people, particularly if you want to use them for computing, you want to use them for Zoom meetings, team meetings, and so on, always go for the OpenCom ones. It's absolutely brilliant. And they're actually very comfortable to use.
Very comfortable. I do have a question from Sharon asking how do these headsets feel when wearing glasses? Unfortunately, I don't wear glasses, Sharon, so I can't comment on that. Would you have any comments on that, David?
Yeah, the only ones I don't like wearing when I've got my audio sunglasses on are the aftershocks, because the little pods come in front of your ears. And the band almost like it presses up against your glasses, and it does get really uncomfortable after a while. The thing about my headset is because the ear cups are quite large, you don't get so much pressure pushing in on the side of your head where your stem of your glasses come up and over your ears. So much nicer.
Thank you.
All right, that's cool. All right. Now, the other thing I always like to talk about when I talk about computers is the type of specifications. Now, I know Michael's listening and he's going to have another heart attack, but for Windows people that are actually in the workplace, all the reports that I've actually seen over the last 10 years or so always recommend thanks, Michael. Always recommend the highest specs available to run assistive technology. And so when I say assistive technology, I'm really talking about, classic things like JAWS for Windows, ZoomText in particular, or both running JAWS and ZoomText together, which is called Fusion, the Dolphin Screen Reader, Supernova, Dragon Dictate, whatever else you might be using. Because or Guy Connect, which you probably wouldn't be using in the workplace. But I'll get on Guy Connect in a minute. That's all right. I didn't forget it. So we tend to recommend, and it was funny because this morning I just saw the specifications for the new Adaptive Technology Specialist demo machines. And we have to demo Windows, JAWS, ZoomText. We also have to emulate demo the Mac as well. So all of those are i7 processors and 16 gigabytes of RAM. If you're a home user, then I normally say an i5 with 8 gigs of RAM is more than adequate. So my Surface Pro here that I've had for 5 years, it's got, so I'll just answer that question now, Tony. It doesn't let you know your microphone's on. It tells you if a Bluetooth device is connected. So it'll just say connected for only one Bluetooth device. It'll say connected twice. But no, none of these devices tell you whether the mic's on or off, which, getting back to the Arctis one, I have this magic button on the side, which is a mute button. So you push it in, it's muted, push it out, it's muted. Or on my mixer, below each of the channels coming in, like the mics and the PC, I can mute that channel as well. So if I'm going to do a cough or anything else, I can mute myself and so on. Or if you've got your baby screaming in the background on a Zoom meeting and you're just listening, you can also mute yourself that way as well. So you don't have to mute the computer. All right, so as I just said, i7, 16 gigabytes of RAM, you'll always find us normally recommending that for the workplace. For home, i5, 8 gigabytes of RAM. I normally stick with Intel because I have too many issues with other brands. Other brands are okay, but you always get the deep water. And look, most computers these days are pretty good. And Tony did mention Guy Connect, which is basically, it's a talking interface to allow you to do the main functions of a computer. So things like word processing, email, web browsing, contact list, all the sort of the general stuff that you do with your computer. So that's called Guide Connect.
Basically, it simplifies the interface. That's my understanding, David.
It does. And the nice thing about it is that it's speech output, large print, and if you've got a touchscreen on a monitor or on your laptop monitor, you can also use it via the touchscreen. So it's got various options. You can even use it with a remote control. So you can sit there and, use your remote. So people can come in and say, "Oh, you're watching television." It's like, no, I'm controlling my computer. So that one works. That one works really nicely. So that's the main specs. The rest of the specs, is up to you. I always like a computer. I'm probably still old-fashioned, but I sort of hated it when Apple brought out the new Macs because they were missing my favorite port, which is the SD card slot, because I'm a Victor Reader and a Victor Stream user. And my QBraille also uses an SD card as well. So I'm a bit annoyed about that one. So I love SD card slot. I love a computer that's not only got, multiple USB-C ports, but it's also got your traditional USB-A port, because I use lots and lots of devices that love to plug straight into a USB-A port. So things like my old scanner that still runs, amazingly enough. It's a Canon LAD 20, I think, scanner, and a few other things that love to be plugged into just a USB-A port. And then, of course, you can still get, if you really want to, your DVD, CDD drives. Of course, most computers these days have got a network port and so on. So, but I always say, and this is the reason why I tend to love laptops, is they seem to be updated a little bit faster than your good old desktop motherboards and so on. Maybe not so much these days, but I always like a computer the first thing I do on a computer when I set it up is turn on Wi-Fi. Well, of course you have to do this. Turn on Wi-Fi, turn on Bluetooth, and off you go. Because I sort of feel nakedly isolated. My computer is not connected to something. All right, so let me move on to peripherals for access to technology, and then I'll see if everybody's got any questions. USB. Okay, so very quickly, USB port is your old-fashioned size. Where'd I put that cable? I think I turfed it, but it's the old-fashioned. It's your if you've got a mouse or a standard USB keyboard, it's the big connector on the end of it, and that's your USB connection. The USB-C. If you've ever seen a lightning cable, the end of a lightning cable, the USB-C port is slightly thicker, and they normally charge at a high wattage rate. And they also transfer data at a much faster speed. So, and most laptops and desktops come with USB-C ports these days, because you might have heard in Europe, the European Commission wants to make everything go to USB-C, and Apple's squirming about it because they don't want to do that. But I think eventually, all their Macs are USB-C mainly these days. So I think Lightning will end up being a thing of the past, and everything will just be USB-C. So if anybody sees you wandering around with a lightning cable in the next 2 years, they've got no idea what you're talking about. Speaking of cables, I'll get to that in a minute once I've done my little peripheral stuff. But peripherals, remember that you have things like refreshable braille displays. So things like the Brilliant series of braille displays, which are a hybrid one. You can do notes on them. You can connect them up to a host device via USB, C or A, depending on your adapter. And you can also plug them into, of course, other little things, iPhones, iPads, Android devices, that sort of stuff. So braille displays are very, very cool. You can also get custom keyboards, which I probably wouldn't necessarily use on a Windows or a desktop. But remember, particularly on the iPads and also the Android tablets like a Samsung, you've got this little device. And this is the Orbit Writer. So it's basically a braille input keyboard, connects up to 5 Bluetooth devices, and you can switch easily between Android, iOS quite easily. I don't particularly use it on the Mac or Windows because it doesn't really do a good job. Excuse me. But as far as the iPhone and the iPad and my Z3 Flip's concerned, my Android phone works beautifully. And it's just light. You can just sort of wave it around in the air. To me, it feels like a very oversized biscuit, like a Scotch finger biscuit for some odd reason. But it's just a really nice keyboard to type on. It's a couple $100, but it's a good, solid, custom keyboard. If you want something in your pocket that, for example, you find it hard to use voice dictation on your iPhone or your iPad, or you don't like the on-screen keyboard, or you've tried the braille screen input on your keyboard. So that's where on your screen of your iPhone, you can turn it into braille screen mode. And when you place your 6 fingers, that's where your braille input keyboard pops up, if you like, virtually on the screen. And then you can start brailing away. And you can do backspace. You can flick to the right and do an enter key. You can flick down to a space and blah, blah, blah. It works really nicely. But some people just like a real physical keyboard. And just quickly for scanning, most people can grab a hold of things called document scanners these days that you plug in. I'm sure most people have heard about the Pearl camera with OpenBook or the OCR option that's already available in JAWS. On the Mac, I tend to use this program that I've had for a long, long time called DocuScan. And I use that with my flatbed scanner. And I've also got another one, OCR program for the life, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called FineReader, I think. But I can actually use my iPhone as my camera for doing object character recognition. And Tony, by my finger, we've got about 8 minutes left.
That's correct. What about the Seeing AI app?
Yeah, look, the Seeing AI app, it only works on iOS, so it only works on iPhone and the iPad. So it's not going to work on Windows or a Mac. But it's very good if you've got you've got your iPhone. It's a free program, so you can run it on that. The version for Android is basically called Google Lookout or Google Lens. There's a couple of them, but Google Lookout, there's Google Lens. Google Lookout's the main one. And it basically does exactly the same thing almost that the Seeing AI app does. So it does things like it'll do OCR, object character recognition. It'll do documents. It'll do barcode reading, which they call product identification. It'll do what's available. Sorry?
Banknotes recognition?
Yes, yeah. It'll do banknotes or currency recognition. It'll try and determine what's your environment, which I'm not quite sure why, because it keeps reckoning my guide dog's actually a cat. Which she must be a very large cat. It can recognize handwriting, and you can also it also does this. It also does the what's it called? World recognition using your LiDAR option in your iPhone 12 Pro or 13 Pro. So that means you can tell how far an object is away. So you might be with LiDAR. It's going to beep at you, depending on how far people are away from you, which we used to use, or we still use for COVID, to tell how far things were. The name of the iPhone app is called Seeing AI. So Seeing, space, and AI as in artificial intelligence. And can I just say one final thing, which I've never harassed Michael about, who I keep picking on through this webinar. Have lots and lots of cables. My wife says I've got too many cables, but you can't have too many micro USB cables, which would normally plug into things like Victor Streams. Can't have too many USB-A, USB-C, audio cables for extending the reach of your plugged-in earphones or speakers, and so on. I'm glad you brought up that option, because one thing I did completely forget to talk about are stands. So stands, and I'm going to pick up my iPhone here, and Tony, if I point it there, can you see my Archon stand?
You need to go out a little bit because you can see part of it. Yes, but it's sort of blended in with your microphone and your lamp, so you just have to point to it.
Okay, so that's the end of the Archon stand, where I have my iPhone sitting facing down, and that's exactly what I use for doing optical character recognition with the Seeing AI. So if I was to put that in now, you would see this on the screen. That's me now pointing down at my table. So I don't have to hold the camera. I can completely have it there. And I can also plug, and that's another reason why I use a Bluetooth keyboard with my iPhone or a custom keyboard like the Orbit, because the iPhone can stay on the Archon stand, and I can just sit here on my desk with my Bluetooth keyboard or my Orbit writer and do my OCR. So I never recommend that people do anything with OCR without a stand. Okay, so get yourself, my favorite stand is this Archon stand, and that's ARKON stand. And I can have it go up as high as about 2 meters, actually 1.5 meters. I can bend it around so it tends to go in different right angles, and I can have the camera in any position I like because it's on a ball swivel. Absolutely amazing stand. It's only about $150 or $60, I think. And you can also get a connection for it, which we don't sell at Vision Australia, which is an iPad connection that clips to the main pole, and you can use it that way. And there's also a really cool Belkin mini stand that we also sell that you can pop an iPad on. So and another stand that I just bought from the shop, from Aldi, is this one. This one's just a stand with my iPad sitting in it. And that works really nicely. And I think from when Aldi had it, this stand was about $50 or $60. So if I take my iPad out, that's all it is. It's just these two things that I can push up and down. So I could actually fit my iPhone in there. The problem with this stand is that it only faces front. Okay, so I can't twist it or bend it or whatever else. And then what my iPhone's been sitting in, as we've been talking, and I promised Tony I'm almost finished.
So got 4
This
minutes.
is excellent. Damn. All right. This is a little stand I bought for $10 on the weekend from Aldi. It's just a little fold-up stand that I've been sitting my iPhone in for the whole Zoom meeting. And then when I'm finished, have a look at this. I can now fold that down, push that bit down, fold it down, and there's the stand that you can put in your pocket for $10. And that's absolutely perfect. So I can
Just hold it up a little bit, David.
Yep.
Yep, cool, thank you.
So that's all folded up. And it works really nicely. So if you ever see a little smartphone stand come on Aldi for $10, it's a really good thing to do. Of course, I can't use it for OCR because it's only really allowing me to angle the camera of the iPhone forward. So for angling type stuff and reading OCR, it really has to be a proper stand like the Archon stand. But if you literally just want to face an iPad or an iPhone, then the Belkin one, that cheap stand that I said from another shop, or this little one. So there you go. So that's the tips and tricks of all the things that I've been playing with over the last, effectively 3 decades. And it's been, it's been great because I have all these things at home. And I'm luckily, I always say to people, maybe don't throw too many things out because you never know when you might need something, which is why my wife refers to my office as the junk shop. But look, in the last 2 minutes we've got, does anybody else have any other final questions for myself or Tony?
Cynthia said she has an Archon stand and she thinks it's the best as well.
Oh, very good. Now, Cynthia, I want you to put a review on the new website for Vision Australia. And I'm not trying to anticipate your rating, but I want to see a 5-star rating for it. No pressure. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions?
JB says, thank you, David, for your wealth of knowledge and experience.
Thank you. And look, as Tony said to another participant, we did have, this will be available in the next day or two on our YouTube Vision Australia channel. Now, Tony, are we doing transcripts for these webinars or not quite yet?
So we have the Zoom webinar automatically tries to produce a transcript, so we can provide that to clients if they request it. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it is a start. So for Jay Murphy, if you just email visionstoreevents@visionaustralia.org, we'll be able to get this transcript to you to help you view it as you rewatch the webinar. Okay, do you just repeat that email address again? Sure, it's visionstoreevents@visionaustralia.org if you require a transcript of the actual webinar session. Excellent. Right, fantastic. All right, Tony, I'll pass it back to you to close up for the day. No worries. So thank you everyone again for attending. Please contact the Vision Store team on 1300 847466 or email visionstore@visionaustralia.org if you have any further question on what was discussed in today's webinar. At the end of this webinar, there will be a short survey for you to complete. Any feedback that you can provide will assist us in improving our content and delivery of future webinars. We'd love you to join us for the next edition of Exploring Tech webinar in July, and we have a couple of special guests joining us. We'll be talking about telecommunication devices. So we have a representative from Oricom who provide us with the big button phones, and we also have a representative from Olitech who will discuss their new mobile phone range. So please check your emails and our website for further details. Thank you, David. And thank you all for attending. Goodbye.
Vision Australia.
Blindness, low vision, opportunity.
Vision Australia logo. 3 navy blue ovals linked together diagonally within a bright yellow rectangle.